everyone, welcome to today's video. It's been quite a while since I've done an actual official sit-down video, probably over a year, and I thought that this video would be a really good way to kind of get back into it because I just really love movies in general, and especially Disney movies, and the live action Little Mermaid is really popular as lots of people are commenting on it right now. It's a big topic. So I thought that I would make my own review video. And just a really quick disclaimer, if you see me looking down a lot, I have tons of notes here on my laptop, and so I'm going to be looking down a lot at that to make sure that I get across everything that I wanted to say. And I'm also wearing my Little Mermaid shirt. I'm not really sure how much you can tell. I'll stand up and show that. So I'm on brand for today. And then really quickly before we get into it, I just want to mention that I saw this movie in the theaters a little over a week ago, so my memory might not be entirely accurate with this. I tried to remember as much as possible and research stuff, but I tried not to research too much just so everything would be accurate to my memory. And yeah, there will be spoilers in this. Just a disclaimer for basically the whole video, there will be spoilers. And I know what some of you might be thinking. If you haven't even seen the movie yet, you're like, I've seen the animated Little Mermaid, I know what happens, I don't need to be worried about spoilers in the live action one. But I will say that they did change around quite a few things, so if you're planning on seeing this in theaters or when it comes out on streaming or DVD or whatever, and you don't want any spoilers to know about the changes that happened or anything, I would maybe click off this video and maybe go watch another one of mine instead. But let's just actually get into it. Okay, so for my first impression with this movie, I thought that it was actually really good. I've been seeing a lot of negative things that people are saying about it, but I thought that it was not bad. It was actually a really good Disney remake. Now, should it maybe have not been a remake and maybe just an entirely new original movie? Probably, but the fact that it was a remake can't be changed, and I think that it was a really good one, and the cast did an amazing job, all kinds of stuff like that. So how I'm going to be doing this review is I'm going to kind of talk about things in categories. So I have 5 different categories. I'm going to start with costuming and character design. Then I'm going to go to plot and story changes from the original, music, set design, and then character relationships. So let's just jump right into it with costuming and character design, and with this I'm only going to be talking about the main characters. So we're going to begin with Ariel in her mermaid form. So lots of you, even if you haven't seen the movie, have likely seen the promotional posters and everything, and in her mermaid form I really liked her tail and how they designed it slightly differently than the animated one. I think it's interesting how they had an ombre sort of effect with the colors. However, I wish the green was highlighted a bit more because it would have been closer to the animated version. But then the color of it does change in different lighting scenarios, so it's kind of hard to tell what the true color of the tail is. But overall, it's very beautiful, and I love the design as a whole. And I enjoy how her top is still purple like the original, but it's also scales instead of shelves, so it's kind of more cohesive with her overall look in this movie. And then for Ariel on land, I'm going to be talking about her main blue dress here, and I actually really enjoy that they didn't just straight copy the animated Ariel's dress that she has when she goes around the town. And I'm not sure why. I mean, probably just because the dress is so pretty on Hallie, and blue is one of my favorite colors, so that probably has something to do with it. And then the pink headband that she wears too adds a really nice contrast, in my opinion. And then moving on to King Triton. In this version of the film, he has on armor over his chest, and he doesn't in the animated version. I think that it was cleverly designed. I think with like shells and things you'd find in the ocean or could make out of stuff you'd find, like the gold embellishments and stuff. But overall, I feel that the armor was a little bit too intimidating, and it didn't make it feel like Triton would be very approachable, if that makes any sense. And I will elaborate more on that in the last section, the character relationships. Now with Ursula, I feel like they did a great job making Ursula look practically just like she did in the animated version. They did a good job making her look dark and scary. And the one thing I did notice that they changed is that she has a tall collar and long sleeves in this version, which she didn't have any sleeves in the animated movie, and I don't mind that change. Like, I don't prefer it one way or the other, really. So yeah. And now with Prince Eric, Eric had several costumes, all of which I cannot really remember them each, like, individually. Like, I would if I saw a photo or the movie again, but, like, they don't necessarily come to mind, each individual one, because they all just look, like, sort of similar and blend together in my head. But I do know they used a lot of white with blue vests, and I didn't mind that, but I do feel like they missed the opportunity to have him wear his iconic red belt, or technically it's a cummerbund, but yeah, he didn't wear that once at all. And we got Ariel's iconic mermaid look. Although it was changed a little bit, you could tell that it was Ariel's, main iconic look, but we didn't get the main Eric iconic look, if you get what I'm saying. But besides the point, they did a great job in his costumes. I just wish that even if like he was wearing it for a few minutes during the film, I wish that we at least got his iconic look a little bit. Okay, now with Flounder, we're going to be moving on to more of like character design now, because these are CGI characters. So with Flounder, I think that people have a lot of bad things to say about him, but people sometimes, I think, forget that this is supposed to be a live action movie. If they made him look more cartoony, then people would have complained that they didn't make him realistic enough. I mean, that's just how things go. People will complain about one thing, but then if it was how they had it, they would complain about it. It just goes back and forth. And apparently when I was researching, I couldn't find any type of fish that Flounder is supposed to be. So I feel like it's alright that he looks maybe a little odd, because he isn't supposed to be any certain species of fish. I do think that they could have made him a little bit rounder, though, and had more yellow scales on him instead of silver, just so he looked a little bit more recognizable as Flounder and not just any other fish. Now with Sebastian, he looks very different than his animated counterpart, and I'm not too sure how I like that, honestly, with him. Because I even looked up what kind of crab he is supposed to be, and apparently, according to WeGotThisCovered.com, he's supposed to be a tropical ghost crab, and that kind cannot survive underwater. I even looked up photos, and it looks exactly like the type of crab that he is in this movie. So the fact that they can't survive underwater is a big problem right there. Granted, he's above land with Ariel for most of the movie, but I mean, even in the animated version and this one, it's like established that he lives underwater serving King Triton. So I'm just kind of overall wondering how they decided on designing him as that type of crab, and like, why? Like, you'd think that during the production of the movie, somebody would have come across this information about that this crab can't live underwater and would have been like, oh, by the way, maybe we should change his design to a crab that actually makes more sense. I don't know how that got through everything. But yeah, that's what I have to say about Sebastian. And now for Scuttle, they did change his whole type of bird as well, and he is no longer a seagull, and is also no longer male. That's according to everything I found online. Unless I misheard, I could have sworn that they referred to Scuttle as a he in the movie, but everything online is saying that they in fact did change Scuttle to a female because of the voice actor being a female. And she is also now a gannet instead of a seagull, which is a type of bird that can dive underwater. I think it's interesting that they made that change because I think she's only ever shown underwater once, at least from what I can remember. So I'm just wondering, like, why they did that. Like, I don't know. And then also, I think when I was researching, a gannet only lives in like northern North America, like the northern United States and Canada. And I'm pretty sure that this version of the movie is taking place in the Caribbean. So, again, you'd think somebody would have come across that. Yeah, I don't mind the new look of Scuttle. It's just a different route than I expected. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the second section of the review, where I'm going to cover the plot and the story changes that they took from the they changed from the original. So if you still haven't seen the movie and you've been watching this far, this is probably the section where there's going to be the most spoilers. So like about changes from the original. So just a warning there. And so the first change I recall is that there was no concert that Ariel was late for in the beginning. And Sebastian was not a music conductor, composer, whichever one he is. Ariel actually ended up being late for the Coral Moon. I'm not exactly sure what that is, but yeah, and then she was late because she was talking to Scuttle like before, but instead of going above water, Scuttle swam underwater to a rock where they met instead. And then the next thing is that Prince Eric is actually adopted. It's established that he's adopted in this movie. And they made the Queen a more prominent role, whereas in the animated they didn't show like his parents at all. He also doesn't play the flute, as far as I can remember, which it wasn't like a huge part of the plot or his personality, but it would have just been a nice touch to show him playing his little flute, you know, for a while. Okay, and then the next thing that's different is when Ariel was upset after her father destroyed her items in her grotto, Ursula's eels come and show an image of Ursula to Ariel. They're able to speak to each other, like, through the water, some, like, swirling portal type thing. And she convinces Ariel to come to her for help that way, and the eels do not speak, unlike in the animated version. So, with that, Ariel also does not sign a contract for Ursula, and instead she takes one of her scales from her tail to kind of, like, seal the deal. And that she's going to be human for like 3 days and whatever. And then when Ariel becomes a human, she's rescued by a fisherman who accidentally catches her in his net, and he takes her to the castle instead of Max and Eric finding her on the beach. I feel like it would have been nice if they kept it still Max and Eric finding her on the beach. Like, I mean, I don't get why they had to change it, but I mean, it's not a necessarily terrible change either way. And then Ariel explores the castle, and Eric finds her in a room of his that has plenty of knickknacks, probably like his study or library or something, which is similar to her grotto, and they start to get to know each other there instead of having a dinner scene with him in Grimsby. I will go more into detail about that scene later on in the character relationships section. And then the scene where the chef has a song and tries to cook Sebastian in the original has been removed altogether as well. That song doesn't exist in this. There's no scene of the chef like cooking anything. That just doesn't exist in this version. And then Sebastian discovers that the spell Ursula put on Ariel, makes it so she can't remember that she has to kiss Eric within 3 days when it is mentioned. I think it's when it's mentioned. I'm not sure if she doesn't remember all the time or what. It's a little unclear there, but yeah. Okay, and then the scene where Eric takes Ariel out into the kingdom to explore for the day is a lot more fleshed out, colorful, vibrant, and overall way more fun to watch than the animated version. I love the part where Ariel dances with the crowd. It like really immerses her in the whole atmosphere. And I also love that they did a Jodie Benson cameo. It was very clever. And if you don't know, Jodie is the voice of the original animated Ariel, so I thought that was really nice that they had her do a little cameo in this one. And the kiss the girl scene and when they get back to the castle after that was also a lot more fleshed out, and Ariel and Eric were able to connect in a more organic way than in the animated version. And then Eric didn't seem to be under a trance by Vanessa as much, and Grimsby was confused by the whole thing and supported Ariel and Eric instead of blindly supporting Vanessa and Eric, which I think makes a lot more sense, honestly. And then Vanessa and Eric's almost wedding or engagement party, it was a little bit unclear if it was just an engagement party, a dinner party, or if they were literally about to get married at that point. Like, I don't think they were. I don't know. But anyways, it was on the castle balcony, not a ship. So, when Scuttle found out that Vanessa was Ursula, he did it through the castle window instead. And due to that, once Ariel heard Vanessa was Ursula, all she basically had to do was run to the castle and up to the balcony. And there wasn't as much urgency felt as there was when Flounder had to get her to the boat in the original. So like, Flounder was having a hard time getting Ariel to the boat in that because the boat was going fast. It was like this whole kind of like race. But in this one, it didn't feel like as urgent because she kind of just like ran up the stairs and confronted the whole thing there. Like, it wasn't as big of a deal like it was, but it just didn't feel like as urgent, if you get what I'm saying. And then during the battle with Ursula, Ariel actually ended up steering the boat that killed Ursula instead of Eric doing so in the animated, like as in the animated version. So I think that was actually a really, you know, Ariel would be the one to defeat Ursula because it was them two that had the main conflict instead of Eric and Ursula. I mean, it makes sense why he did it in the animated, like he was saving Ariel, but I don't know, it was a good change. And then at the end of the movie, they showed Ariel and Eric setting off on a honeymoon adventure, I think it was, to explore uncharted waters instead of their wedding. So instead of the movie just ending with a wedding and they go off into the distance, it kind of there was like more to it, and they kind of explained more of what they were going to go doing. Okay, so now it is time to move on to the third section, the music. So the first thing is that the song The Daughters of Triton was removed, as well as the concert scene as a whole, as I mentioned earlier. There was no whole thing, like they were all at a concert and Sebastian was like the conductor or whatever. That just wasn't a thing anymore. Okay, so Part of Your World. I'm actually gonna like do the songs that were in the original first, and then I'm going to do the songs that were added to this movie last. So Part of Your World, I think that Halle did a great job with this song. Her voice is very strong, you can really tell. And she gives the song a slightly different feel than the original, which I think is great, honestly. And then with Under the Sea, the scene is very colorful and energetic, and they actually had Halle join in on some lines when that wasn't the case in the animated version. And I think it might be my favorite song sequence of the movie. Now, not my favorite song of the whole movie, but just like the visuals and the whole like atmosphere of it. It was my favorite song sequence to watch. And you can certainly tell that the sea creatures were done with CGI, like obviously, but I don't think it's as bad as everyone is saying. And especially with a movie of this scale, you have to use CGI, so I don't see why people are so surprised about it. I think the artists are very talented, and it turned out great. Okay, so now with Poor Unfortunate Souls, I thought that Melissa McCarthy did a good job with this song, but there were a few times I thought that the extra oomph or powerful delivery, if that makes any sense, wasn't there. Or maybe she just sounds very different from the original singer. It again does have a very different feel than the animated version, which I like that, so it can be distinguished as its own thing and not an exact remake. I don't mind that most of these songs like sound different, just because, like, yeah, it's a remake, but you don't want it to be the exact same thing. So I feel like it's good that there are little differences. Okay, so for Kiss the Girl, I think that the song also sounds very different than the original. In the current version, you can hear Scuttle and Flounder singing along with Sebastian instead of pretty much just Sebastian, like in the animated one. And I like that it again sounds different and it's not just an exact copy. But for this song, I do prefer the original, as it seems to have a more prominent instrumental moments, and it's just a classic. Like, I don't know. I feel like sometimes you can't beat the classics. Okay, so now we're going to move on to original songs that they add for this movie. And the first one is Wild Uncharted Waters, which was for Eric. And I really like that they added a new song for Eric. It's honestly one of my favorite songs from the new movie. I think they did a great job making it sound like it could have been in the original film. Like, if you didn't see the original Little Mermaid, I feel like you wouldn't have known that this song wasn't in the original, maybe. I don't know. And then Jonah hauer-king, I think is how you pronounce his name, has a great singing voice, and overall he played Eric really well, and you can really like understand and feel the emotion behind the song, which helps the storyline along in a great way. And then with For the First Time, which is a new original song that they added for Ariel, I love this song. It's also one of my favorites from this new movie. I think it was very clever how they added it as an inner monologue for Ariel, so we can understand more of what's going on in her head when she's experiencing all these new things as a human. The tune and beat is also very catchy, and it just shows off more of Halle's great singing voice. Okay, now the next and I think last original song that they added is called The Scuttlebutt, and Scuttle and Sebastian sing it. And when this song first began in the theater, I thought that it was going to be just a quick little like few lines, but it ended up being a whole song. I thought that it sounded very out of place as it was mostly a rap, and that style just didn't scream The Little Mermaid. I don't think that it was needed, or if they wanted to include a song there, it should have been a different style. However, I will say, the more I listened to it in preparation for this video, because I did listen to like all the songs, and I kind of like did the originals and the new ones to kind of like compare. But the more I listen to it for this video, the catchier it becomes, so I don't know. And then just really quickly, lastly, I wanted to make a note about the reprises, I think is how you pronounce it. If that's wrong, I'm sorry. and the instrumental stuff. And I thought that they were really good as well. And the instrumental music throughout the film is great, and it's very noticeable. Like, you're not sitting there and then you, like, at the end of the movie, you're like, where was the instrumental music? Like, no, you can really hear it. It's really noticeable. And my favorite instrumental section would probably have to be the Kiss the Girl Island Band reprise when Ariel and Eric are dancing in the market, and the finale music. Okay, so moving on to the fourth section for the review, set design. So for underwater, I'm just going to kind of collect it and all into one, except for Ursula's lair, which is coming next. From what I can remember, the underwater scenes were done very well, in my opinion. But they were overall dark, as I've heard a lot of people say. And the lightest moments are during Under the Sea, I believe. I don't entirely mind this, though, because if you think about it, there's probably not much sun reaching far down into the depths of the ocean. So it makes sense. The deeper you go, the less sun there would be. And I really think they did a good job making it look like the characters were underwater. And I didn't notice any terrible green, or rather I think they used a blue screen mishaps. Like, they all looked pretty solid and nice to me. Now, Ursula's lair. Her lair was very dark, and I feel like that makes sense and helps convey that she's a bad witch. And plus, it's deep in the ocean where the sun likely wouldn't reach anyway. So I don't have any problems with that, really. And then at the castle, I love how we got to see more parts of the castle in this version, especially Eric's study, where he showed Ariel all of the things that he has collected. Now with the town, I think that when they went into the town/market, it looked very Caribbean, warm, colorful, and inviting. I love the town scene, and I would love to visit it myself, honestly. When they were riding out to the market, I loved how they were on the shore and you could see the ocean just stretching out into the horizon. It just looked so pretty. And then with the pond, where they did kiss the girl, I think that the look of it is very beautiful. It added to the romantic ambiance in a very similar way that the landscape did in the original version. They also lit it very well, so we knew it was clearly nighttime, but we could still see what was happening. It wasn't like overly dark, in my opinion. And then overall with the set design, I think that the movie looked visually stunning as a whole. The location that they chose to film it at was so beautiful and made me want to go there myself. I didn't actually look up where they filmed it. I'm going to probably have to do that after this. And it really did feel like it fit within the live-action Disney remake realm. It didn't feel out of place or anything. Okay, now we're going to move on to the last section of the review, which is character relationships. So let's start with Ariel and Flounder. I mean, that's one of the first duos you get to see in the movie. I feel like it's just a good place to start. So I think that you can immediately tell that Ariel and Flounder are good friends, just like in the animated version. There isn't too much else to say, except you really get the sense that Flounder wants to help Ariel as much as possible. So yeah, I think the relationship is good throughout the film, just like the original. And then with Ariel and Sebastian, the thing with them is that Sebastian mostly dreads having to look after her, and Ariel just sees him as a tag-along. But throughout the movie, they become closer, as Sebastian just truly wants to help Ariel in the long run, much like the animated version as well. And then with Ariel and her sisters, I wish that there was more substance to the relationships, like between Ariel and her sisters and everything. I mean, sure, they aren't entirely important to the overall plot, but it would have been nice if Ariel had at least one sister she could have talked to and been friends with. I think it would have been a nice change from the animated version, because in the Little Mermaid 2 and Ariel's beginning, she has much more like a better relationship with her sisters in the original movie, so I feel like they could have like incorporated that just a little bit. Okay, so I think this is like the next two that I'm going to be talking about are going to be the biggest sections of character relationships, so let's just get straight into it. Okay, so Ariel and King Triton. I think that in this movie, I like sort of mentioned about Triton's costuming, that his armor makes him seem a bit more closed off from those around him. And even though he's harsh in the animated version, you can tell that he loves Ariel and has a good enough relationship with her besides their disagreements about human things. In this one, however, the relationship seems strained regardless. But yeah, even though he is still harsh with her, it doesn't feel like he's as harsh as the previous version, if that makes any sense. I don't really know how to explain it. But as the movie goes on, you see how much he cares for her by wanting her to be found when she goes missing, aka up to land. And then he eventually gives her back her legs and ultimately gives his sort of approval of her whole relationship with Eric at the end of the movie, as do her sisters and the rest of the merfolk. Which I think is a great touch, instead of just having them all like wave to them at the end. And I'm pretty sure there's something verbally said by Triton about them all supporting Ariel and Eric, but again, it's been over a week since I've seen the movie, so I may not be remembering everything correctly entirely. Okay, so the next relationship between the characters I'm going to talk about is Ariel and Eric. And I think that Ariel and Eric's relationship is much more fleshed out and way more breathing room is given to it in this movie. Feels much more organic, and the movie shows Ariel finding Eric's study in the castle, where he collects items from his voyages, exactly like Ariel collects items from the human world in her grotto. So it's shown that they have a sense of adventure and wonder about the world in common. They get to know each other a lot during that scene in the study, which I think is a really clever way to go about it instead of just having a fancy dinner with Grimsby. Like I mentioned earlier, the scene where they go out into town is also much more lively and detailed, and it just shows us more of Ariel getting to know her way around the human world with Eric. And then during the Kiss the Girl scene, there is also, I'd say, a longer amount of time dedicated to them talking instead of mostly just the song. And overall, it truly does feel like Ariel and Eric have a connection other than Ariel just liking him for his looks. And it's a nice and welcome change in my opinion. Not that there was anything particularly wrong before, I just like what they did with them this time around. It just feels very organic and more natural than in the previous version. Now, with Eric and Grimsby, they seem to have a slightly closer friendship than in the animated one, and Grimsby doesn't blindly support Eric and Vanessa, like I mentioned before. He seems to want the best for Eric, while also gently guiding him. And Grimsby was overall a great side character in this version. Like, he was pretty good. And then Eric and Queen Selena. Queen Selena is an entirely new character. So we never got to see Eric interact with his parents at all before in the original movie. And so like I said before, Eric is adopted, and he struggles with accepting his duties as a prince, as he just wants to sail across the seas and explore and everything, which strains his relationship with his mother, who tells him he cannot go on voyages anymore after he's injured on the one that Ariel saves him from. And she doesn't seem to share his interests with like that whole exploration thing, but she does come around by the end of the movie, and she's not a bad character. She just doesn't have the same interests as Eric, I guess. And she does eventually accept Ariel. I don't remember too much else at this point about her, though. Probably have to watch the movie a second time to remember more information about her. Now, Ursula and Triton. In this movie, it is confirmed that Ursula and Triton are siblings rather than it just being a fan theory or rumor, as with the animated version. And Triton has banished her, so their relationship is very difficult, and he doesn't hesitate to sacrifice himself to her for Ariel, which also amplifies his love for Ariel too as well, because I didn't mention that part when I was talking about them before. However, I am confused about how Triton and Ursula logically can be siblings unless one of them is adopted, because Triton is a merman and Ursula is an octopus. Maybe Ursula was a mermaid to begin with, and she was cursed to become an octopus when she was banished. I don't know. The movie isn't really clear on that. And I didn't write any notes about it, but as I was going through this, I kind of thought that maybe I should touch on Eric and Max, his dog, because I haven't really touched on that. And I feel like Max isn't in this movie as much. Like, he's on the boat when they have the shipwreck. Ariel helps save him, get him to like one of the lifeboats. And there's a part where Eric is playing with him on the balcony. Oh, that's another change I just remembered that they did. Instead of like Ariel coming out of the water and going to Eric on the beach, she actually goes and surprises him on the castle balcony while he's playing with Max. And those are like the two prominent times that I remember Max being in the movie. I know he's just Eric's dog, and he's not really like a huge part of the plot, but it would have been nice if he was included a little bit more. Maybe he was and I just don't remember. But yeah, we actually got through all of my notes, all of my sections. I know there's probably different things, different topics within the movie I could have talked about, but this is what I thought was pretty good. And once I finally see the movie for a second time, once it comes on Disney Plus or whatever, I bet you I would probably have a lot of like updated things to say, but I don't think I'm going to make a second video. This is my thoughts right now after seeing the movie a little over a week ago and just letting it sit and having myself think about it for the past few days and get all these notes together and everything. Honestly, it might be one of my favorites. Not my favorite remake overall. I'm not sure which my favorite remake is, or which the best one necessarily is. I mean, Cinderella, Maleficent, and Aladdin I think are pretty good. And this one is up there. I think they did a great job on it. I mean, there were a few things that I was talking about that weren't really my thing, I didn't really like, or I wish they could have been changed, or that they didn't need to really do in the movie, but I feel like there's gonna be stuff like that. Like, that's gonna be the case with pretty much every movie you watch. There's gonna be stuff that you like and don't like. Even if it's your favorite movie, there's probably little things that you would change. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it for this video. I hope that you enjoyed it, and please leave your thoughts about this movie or anything that I talked about down in the comments below if you'd like to. And don't forget to like the video if you liked it, and subscribe if you want to see more content from me. And I hope that you have a great rest of your day, and I guess I will see you guys in the next video, whenever that may be. Bye!